Greetings. This is the Counter Racist Evolving Engineer program, and this is stream number two for today. Just wrapped up another one 20 minutes ago, but this is the main topic that I wanted to address last night, and so really happy to be back. And so the title of today's segment is the Ados Movement and $5 Negroes Part Two. Not black? Not Ados. You cannot be Ados if you're not black. And so, of course, we need to know who is black. So that is what this is going to be about. It's an introduction to what is being called now STI, which does not stand for sexually transmitted infection. It stands now for science, technology, and innovation, with an emphasis on that last word, innovation. That's sort of taking the place of STEM now. Because I mean, you can have science, technology, engineering, and math. That's all part of it, true. But the major thing that moves people forward, and certainly the thing that black people need, is innovation. We need to be able to use science and technology and engineering by everybody, citizen scientists, just thinkers, um, and really, if you look back at most of history, not just this latest modern crucible where most of science is done in a corporate sort of, it's a corporate university industry, and people work in little corners and they're paid highly for these very specialized things. But for most of human history, and I'd probably say it's really the case now, the great leaps have been made by citizen scientists. Maybe they had a patron or something, but certainly when it comes to black people, we're not going to have patrons. We just all have to be about it. We all have to be about thinking logically, looking for evidence, looking at the phenomena around us, and then looking, forming hypotheses, and then testing it the best way we can, and then innovating. And so, what I'm going to introduce to you today is what I think is very powerful, um, a very powerful innovation, but it is very low technology. But we need it to be low technology in order for it to work. But it's simple arithmetic, and it's going to take a couple of hours. But um, this is a really, I believe this is a really important phase for us as black people to be entering into historically. I believe that the video that Max made last week, maybe about 4 or 5 days ago, unveiling it, will be seen as historic, I think. We're entering into a new era, okay? And it will be one in which we're not confused about who's us and who is not us. And I want to explain why I think, sort of in scientific terms, not just political terms, we've been confused about that, or not cared nearly as much as other people have. When I say other people, I mean non-black people. And so I call this black bone technology. So that's what you see. There's the graphic. It is a technology that will help us develop a black bone. Black bone being a merging of the terms backbone and black. In other words, we need to get a spine in terms of being able to tell people who is a black person and be able to say, no, you're not. Okay? We need to be able to hit that decline button. We need to have a spine, because you see, the spine is of a body, and let's look at us as a collective. The spine is the foundation of physical health. It's what allows you to move with integrity. It's what allows you to move and keep all your parts moving with some sort of coordination, um, and to hold it all together. And so if we're not able to be able to physically differentiate, you know, on a pretty easy basis, we're not talking about DNA kits. And if you go to the white paper that I will have uh, listed in the about section, that I don't have right now, but just give it maybe 5 or 10 minutes after it uploads. I will have the links to the white paper that describe this tool, the Cree tool, and you'll be able to read along as to why you don't want to use DNA tests. But I'll touch on it a bit today. They're not reliable for individual ancestry. It's a bunch of hook'em. They make no sense. And geneticists have really raised an alarm about that as well. And you can see the alarm that the geneticists have raised about it being used to determine individual ancestry. But it is a helpful tool in terms of being able to understand large population groups. And it just has to do with the methodology. Again, if you're interested, you can go look at my white paper. I'm going to have the links to that in this um, in the about section. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the Ados movement, $5 Negroes Part 2. What I mean by $5 Negroes is something that I explained the last video, where if it becomes profitable to say you're black, you can bet that the public policy will be such that people who are not black actually get designated as that, as kind of what happened with Cherokees and other tribes that had these very profitable casinos. So this is about getting that black bone. And I think before I get into the actual mechanics, and I'm going to let Max, I'm going to be showing some excerpts of the videos he did because I think he broke it down really well. But before I get into those mechanics that he explains well, and I'm also going to show you a score sheet, um, I want to take care of the basic objections to this to begin with. Are people that have like emotional resistance against excluding people, who we the basic resistance in excluding people who are not black. And what they think is the logical scientific basis for doing that. Really, it's an emotional motivation that is behind it, but they think that they're undergirded by some sort of logic to it. And so I'm going to deal with that first, and then the resistance to it. And then after I've done what I believe I have taken care of what they call in sales the objection. If I've overcome the objections, I know what they are. At that point, then Max and I collaboratively, because I have his little excerpts, we're going to explain how to begin identifying who's black and who's not, and excluding those people who are not. Um, so let me make sure that I'm showing the graphics that I want to be showing at this point. Okay. Okay. All right. I think what I want to do is, while I'm talking about this, I'm going to put up a map that again was Max's idea. Take this one off and put this one on. Okay. And so in the paper, there's a long list of nations from the CIA World Factbook that talks about life expectancy. And life expectancy, of course, is a good proxy for quality of life. Period. It's largely driven by access to technology that allows for sanitation, but of course, when you're at the level, when you've got that level of technology, there are a whole lot of other things to go along with it. So life expectancy is a great proxy, and you look at this map and you can clearly see, the areas that are undeniably black, sub-Saharan Africa, and west of the Horn. And again, we're going to explain, and Max is going to break it down for you, why we're excluding people from the Horn of Africa as being typically black. There are some black people there, but that would not be a group where you want to say, well, if you can fit in with a large group of people there, you're definitely a black person. We're going to explain that. But you see north of the Sahara. See, the greener the area, the longer lived people are. Now, in the last broadcast, I talked about Jamaica and Haiti being in that same boat, and that I need to make a minor correction on that. If you go around the Eastern Caribbean, you will see that life expectancies for black people there are certainly higher than in Africa. And they're a little bit lower than in some of the very small populations where the islands have like 30,000 people, 35,000 people. Their life expectancies, I think St. Nevis and Kitts is higher. But they're very tiny populations of black people. And let me tell you who they are, what they are. What they are in the Eastern Caribbean is somewhat similar to, somewhat similar to black Americans, black people in the United States. We're in the big house. Okay, and certainly the people in these small areas are in the big house. They are on islands that are used as playgrounds for white people. And so if you look at their economy, you'll see that it is entirely dependent upon non-black people. They have tourism industries where ships come in, and white people get off and enjoy the surf and sand, and then they are waited on and with smiles and Caribbean music and steel drums and so on, and the white sands and the aqua waters. And of course, there has to be an infrastructure for white people to enjoy that as a playground, and that infrastructure is there for the few black people there who service them. Okay, and so being in the big house and being there, but there's small numbers of people compared to the overall black population of the world. Okay, and if it's not tourism, which is it is most of the time, it's offshore financial services where you've got European, Canadian, and American companies wanting to base their operations there so that they don't have to pay the taxes that they would in their own countries. Okay, and of course there has to be infrastructure for that, and so those few black people who are there get to enjoy that infrastructure. But again, it's a tiny population. Um, but you can see by this map that race is real. Now I'm going to explain the logic that you see the effects of race. You see that non-black people will like to tell us that race is not real. Now, when you're in a conflict, whether it's a football game, a basketball game, a tennis game, or actual war, you use deceit. You want to deceive the other side. I mean, that's what the athlete to do the faking and all of that. That's you want them to think you're going one direction when you're going another. So it is to the advantage of non-black people to try to convince black people that there's a scientific basis for the statement that race is not real, while you look and you see the evidence here that they are acting on the fact that race is in fact, that it is real. Okay, we don't want to believe it's real for so many reasons. um, that well, yeah, let me get into the two reasons. One is because it's historically been we've been at the bottom for so long, and so if race is if you accept that race is a real thing, that it's a real scientific thing, that it's a real biological thing, then it leads us to believe that somehow we're an inferior creature who just can't keep up. Okay, um, but that's been a small span of history. I think the main thing that's holding us back, we have all kinds of patents in science and so on. The main thing that's holding us back is that we are not wired, I think, genetically to care about race the way that non-black people are. And there was a program that Max and I did on the old platform at Blog Talk Radio, um, and we were discussing that. And I think the reason for it is that as the first people on the planet, genetic diversity served us well because the environments would change, and so we like differences. We embrace them. We don't have the we're xenophilic. That again, that's a term that Max coined. We love differences, and sometimes it has nothing to do with things that have to do with race. I mean, a lot of black people like bowed legs, um, and that's actually a birth defect, or legs that bend backwards. Just anything that's a slightly different. We like originality. We like difference. We embrace it. And that served us well as the first people on the planet, but it is now maladaptive. It is maladaptive because now you have a whole population of Homo sapiens who operate on the basis of race, okay, and exclude us from things, and we have no clue as to what is going on. And so, as long as we continue to embrace people and let them into our circles, share with them the little bit of resources that we do have, share with them our support because we are unclear as to what a black person is, they benefit from that. And they're going to continue benefiting from that. We've got to be able to know to close ranks. We've got to know who's black and who's not black. And it's going to take some emotional fortitude to do that because a lot of us, we have friends, we have family who are not. But I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. I'm going to leave this map up as I overcome what I think are the objections, and then, as I promised, I'm going to get to the tool, the nuts and bolts of how to use math to determine if someone is black and is not, and just how easy it is. Okay, but let me overcome the objections to doing so first. Okay, so first, let me deal with the current. Is live chat up? It's supposed to be. I'm supposed to have it up. Okay, very good. All right. Okay, it is. Um, okay, back to where I was. What was I thinking? Okay, so let me deal with this uh, objection that we don't need it. What are you introducing this math for? We all know who's black and who's not. No, we don't. As Max had said in his video, you get 10 black people in a room and ask them for the definition of a black person, and you're likely to get 10 different answers. But what I'm going to deal with is one, two, three, four, five, the six most common definitions of black person in use in the United States today. Okay, and I'm going to tell you why it's inadequate. Why we don't have an adequate definition right now. I'm going to tell you why each one of these definitions is inadequate. So let's start with the first one. First one is anyone who looks black. Okay, now that obviously is inadequate because people have widely varying ideas and as to what is black and what is not. I may not agree. You're going to have some objective standard in order for us to know what looks black. In addition, people can have self-serving. Like if we don't get this thing right, this ADOS and this ADOS movement and $5 Negroes. If we don't get a definition of black person before the programs for reparations begin being built, we're going to be sunk. We've got to get this straight before that happens. Okay. And because afterwards there are going to be people who'll say they're black, or even you know they'll say they look black, and black people, obviously real black people who love these people who are not black, are going to try to back them up and support them and say they're black. But no, anyone who looks black, I don't know what that means, and I'm certainly not going to let you determine that for me after the fact. A second common definition of what a black person is anyone with a black parent. Anyone with a black parent. Oh boy. Okay, so that is a holdover from the hypo descent, colloquially known as the one drop rule. If you got a black parent, it doesn't matter that the other parent is not black, but that because of this, and again, this was fortified by Dr. Welsing, who was a great scientist but was mistaken on this. This was fortified by her theory on color confrontation that said that black genetics are dominant, and that is not the case. There are a number of physical traits that give one the impression, give you the black phenotype, and they are all determined by a number of variations of a gene called alleles, and they're not more dominant than non-black genetics. They're just not. It's a matter of how the genes recombine through sexual reproduction, depending upon what what is the genetic makeup of the two parents. Okay, so you can have one black parent and not be black, but the reason that's an inadequate definition is because you tell me that someone is black with one black parent, but it's circular. It's circular because show me the black parent. You still haven't told me how I know if that parent is black. It's circular. It's just going around in circles. Okay. The third definition is real similar to the first one, and it's inadequate for the same reasons. Is no, you've got to have two black parents. You got to have two black parents, or you're not a black person. Again, it's inadequate because you can get two people who look really white or certainly don't look black in many parts of the world, but let's just say Louisiana Creoles, and they've been self-identifying as black. They've been thrown in the black group with us because we're the refusal bin, and they don't really live the lives of black people, because people who do not look black, even since slavery times, I'm going to show you the proof of that in this video. I'm taking my time. I'm taking my time. They've never lived the same lives. They've never lived the same lives, even before slavery. Um, but yeah, it's circular. Two black parents. Well, okay, but you still haven't told me how when you introduce me to your parents, I'm going to be able to look at them and know that they are black people or not. Just your word, their word. No, you can't say. You need to be able to determine who a black person is before you use that one. So it's two black parents, one black parent. That's not going to work. Um, Rachel Dolezal, Sean King. Come on now. The list is very long. Okay, another definition: anyone who has black ancestry. Anyone who has black ancestry. But again, that's circular because black ancestry basically still means black person, right? And if I don't know what a black person looks like, if I don't have a definition, I don't know what a black ancestor is. I don't know if you have black ancestry or not, right? That's again inadequate because a black ancestry is about like black person. Some people say, okay, you've got black ancestry and you also identify and associate with black culture and black people. No, because again, you haven't defined black culture and you associate with black people, but I don't, again, who are these black people? How do I know these are black people? It's again circular. Uh, the fifth one, so we're getting to the end because there's only one more after this one. Definition of a black person is a person who has brown to black skin and African textured hair. Now, this is better. And this is someone who's been following my work and riffing off of it and not giving me credit. And um, I'm genuinely not. Generally, I'm able to keep my ego at bay. Uh, but there are reasons for copyrights. There are reasons that I thank people for the things that they do because people really should not be stealing from the work of other people. But at any rate, he has this understanding, and I'm grateful for that. But it is too imprecise because, of course, it will be asked, how brown is brown? People are definitely going to ask that. If we get reparations, I mean, there are going to be people, and it'll get lighter and lighter and lighter because there are going to be people who love these people who are going to want to exclude, who they're going to say, well, the line's just going to keep getting moved. We need objective criteria. Okay. And then, of course, it's going to be asked, what's African textured hair? How coiled does it have to be? You need a physical measure. Okay. And we're going to introduce that today. And then lastly, the definition of black person that is currently in use in the United States is any, and this is one that's used by people who like to say that they practice counter racism science. Okay. And this is the definition of it that Neely Fuller Jr. has given in his works. And that is any person that white people say is black. Okay, now, this is inadequate because, I mean, it should be inadequate for obvious reasons. And I actually meant to go over something before this one before. But you can't, if a white person said that I was if a white person said that I was what? A tulip, would that make me a tulip? If a white person said that the moon shines during the day only and the sun shines during the night, would that make that true? No. No, because it's simply not true. Now, white people can make you try to operate under certain assumptions. Somebody can put a gun to my head and make me get out in front of a microphone and say that I believe that the sky is green and that, there's lots of scientific evidence to back that up. Under coercion, they can make me say those things, but that doesn't make the things that I'm being made to say true. Okay? So no, we do not have a definition of what a black person is. And so, this tool will take care of that. Before I even got to those definitions, I don't have it open, but I wanted to talk. I'm going to have to just give me a second. I'm sorry. I thought that I had it open. Just give me a second. I want to get to some key definitions that you'll find in the white paper that deal with this issue of saying that race is not real, that it's a social construct. Because see, that's where people like to go to. That's where people like to go to yeah, try to get some what they think is some logical backing for their resistance to excluding people. Um, I think I'm just gonna have to find it. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so this is on the question. You're not gonna see a visual for this. You just see the black bone, hopefully. This is on that question of whether race is scientifically real or merely a social construct. Okay, so just bear with me. I'm actually going to read through that part of the paper. And if you just want to go Google right now, you can go to Scribd, you can go to archive.org, you can go to academics edu, academia edu. The papers are uploaded, and if you want to read along, um, and it's just called the Cree Tool paper, white paper. So this is on the question of whether race is scientifically real or merely a social construct. Okay, so here we go. The correct answer to that question, the correct answer to any question, hinges on the definition of terms. You counter racist scientists know this. The terms race, real, and social construct are what is at issue in this instance. The more obvious seems the meaning of a term in a controversy, the more likely that term is to be the source of the confusion. So, what is real? Like Morpheus asked that question in the Matrix film, right, of Neo. What's real? Okay. For scientific purposes, what is deemed as real have two criteria. For scientific purposes, what is deemed as real have two criteria. Here's the first. Number one, it is registered in a person's brain via one or more of our physical senses, or indirectly using those physical senses through reason and effect, such as termites or electrons or the Earth's orbit around the sun. Okay, so you might live in a house. In fact, I had this problem. I did not see any termites. I never saw any termites, but I did see the damage of the termites, and I knew I had seen it before in my life. And I saw it in my house. Okay, so I had seen with my eyes termites before. I had seen with my eyes the damage, them eating on things. I had seen with my eyes via the World Wide Web or somewhere, a bunch of termites eating things. And then I had seen the damage in my house with my eyes. And through reason, I was able to find out I had a termite problem, and I had to get an exterminator. Okay? It's the same thing with electrons. We've not seen them with our eyes, but we see the effects of them. Scientists saw the effects of them. We as consumers see the effects of them. And we can use reason to understand that they exist. We can't see. We're here on the planet. It doesn't seem like we're rotating around the sun. We can't see that. But we can we can feel the cold and the heat. We can see the days with our eyes getting longer and shorter. We can see that effect. We can feel those four seasons, right? And we can watch the movement of the stars above us. And so with science, with reasoning, with mathematics, we were able to reason that the earth moves around the sun, but it all, of course, hinges on things that we actually observed with our senses. Okay, so criteria one is that you have to have sensed it with one of your five senses. You have to have seen it or heard it or felt it, tasted it, etc. Okay, and then there's a second criteria for something to be scientifically real, and that is that somebody besides you has to have experienced it, has to have felt it, experienced it through the five senses. Because if someone says that they saw a person standing in midair, maybe they'll say it's Jesus, you know. Um, Okay. I mean, they may be able to satisfy themselves that it's real to them, and no doubt that this certain things occur that you have experienced. You can't prove that anybody you can, but you can't prove it to anybody else. And so, for practical purposes, in the world, it's not real. Okay, but let's say a second person sees a person standing in midair. Okay, now these two people are looking at the same thing. They're describing that same thing to each other. It is real to those two people. It's not real to anybody else. But let a third person join in, or now you get up to 10,000. It becomes real at that point. At that point, it becomes sort of secondhand reasoning, and maybe somebody takes some video. Okay, um, so something is real only to the people who have experienced it through their physical senses, or or a whole bunch of people have experienced it, and you trust that testimony. Okay, so then what is a social construct? Well, we just discussed it, that the minimum number of people to constitute a society is two. Because you could be on, you could be shipwrecked on an island, and there's just two of you, like in the Blue Lagoon movie or something. And you're a society of two. So at that point, it's real if both of you have seen it. Okay, um, but you know, fundamentally, everything that is real is by definition a social construct, because it takes two people to verify it. And i.e., scientifically real equals social construct. So it is not as if race is something different than anything else. It's not different than a rose. It's not different than um, constellation of stars. It's not different than a planet. We have definitions for these things. Other beings, just like ants, crawl on roses, and it's not a rose, it's just this red thing. And they're bigger animals who don't categorize. We categorize things because they're meaningful to us. you know um, the words for things exist. Words are ways that we communicate with one another. Words for things exist because people have agreed that they observe them in the same ways, and that they have features or characteristics that strike them as significant. Everything that is real is a social construct, so race is no different than that. So now, what is race? What is race? Race is a collection of persons. Let's just get down to it, okay? Race is a collection of persons who have a cumulative similarity of a collection of three or more traits of appearance that is significant enough to distinguish them visually from all other collections of persons, as agreed by whom? As agreed by more than half of all people who encounter them, majority rules, and by half of the persons themselves. So people look at us and see that we're different, and we agree. We look at them and we say that we're different. Okay. Race, and that's race. Race is real because it is a social construct. We see differences. Okay. So that deals with people thinking that there's some sort of scientific justification for being emotionally opposed to excluding people. Um, and is there anything else before we get to it? Anything else? Yeah. Um, so to overcome the objections, uh, challenges. So we're gonna introduce the math here, and it's gonna be good stuff. But we understand the challenges. So here are the challenges that are anticipated as we introduce this tool of excluding people from the black race. Other people exclude. You can't tell a Chinese person who they have to accept, or a Japanese person. They know what they look like. Black people are the only people that don't seem to understand that, and Max did a great job of explaining that. But so we get to this tool, and we're able to objectively, you know, include people and exclude people, and this is what's going to happen. There's going to be resistance by black people to explicitly excluding people from those they call black, whom they find more physically attractive than actual black people. And this applies more to black men than it does to black women. But there are a lot of black men who, the type of women they like, um, they're pursuing, that they plan to marry, all that type of thing, plan to try to date. And if you tell them, and these are you know, fist in the air RBG people, and you tell them, well, that's not a black woman. I just want you to know that. Um, they're going to be very angry. Okay, they're going to be very angry. Second challenge, in admixed families, meaning families who may have been admixed generations ago, such as, all over Latin America, Louisiana, but increasingly all throughout the United States. Okay, and the mixing may have started years ago, and then the mixed people started blending, started breeding with one another. It may be a recent thing where you have one black parent and one non-black parent, but in those families, the children, the siblings may be of different racial classifications. That's just how it goes, because you never know how recombination is going to work in genetic reproduction. I'm sorry, sexual reproduction. And that doesn't seem to be a problem in Brazil. And I'm going to show a video on that. And I'm taking my time here because this is important subject matter, and I'm not gonna, of course, if I'm a student, I'm a teacher, but I mean, I have professionally been a teacher. I taught high school math, and I was an adjunct instructor at a university level, and something else, and I don't want to say what that is because there's a history to that. But you're not going to present the entire course in one class session, right? And you're not going to produce, if you're writing a book, you're not going to be able to, in the first chapter, lay out everything. So this is going to be a survey of the Cree tool, and then we're going to give examples that are going to be real fun with whoever you want us to rate, or we'll pick people ourselves. But yeah, I'm taking my time, and I'm going to go back and talk about the challenges that once we get this math and we are able to exclude people, some of the reaction we're going to get. There are going to be people who have previously believed that they were black, and they based major life decisions on that belief, and they're going to have their classification at odds with what they've been self-identifying. They're going to find out, that yeah, you've been a professor of Africana studies or wherever, you've been wearing kufi hats with onks on the front of them, but you're not a black person. Maybe you've made your living giving lectures on ancient African history, philosophy, but you're not black. That's going to be a problem. Um, and then there are going to be people who are going to say, "Well, I don't like how you did it. I don't like how you classified the hair," because they're used to the 1A through the 4C system, and they're going to think that the rating system that we're introducing, which is a 0 through 3, is too simplistic. And I love that objection, because I mean, that just proves to me, you know what, black people get into great detail. You can find millions of people online engaging in this very minute classifications and differences of hair, and that doesn't seem to bother them. It's not too complicated to do that. Black people have been bagging on each other, capping on each other about their characteristics. Oh, your mama's her gums are so black, or your hair is so nappy, or your mom, all that kind of. Black people don't have any problem noticing fine gradations, and so any objection that this is too complicated is, ridiculous. And all of the parts of the algorithm are necessary, and for scientific reasons that I'll be able to explain, and that are in the white paper. Um, yeah, your color, your hair type, your facial features, all of these things are very important, have been scientifically demonstrated to be extremely important in whether or not one is beheld to be a black person or not. Okay. And so we've made it as practically simple as possible, because what we're trying to do is have a standard that's sort of like a court standard, beyond a reasonable doubt. You want to maximize the amount of people who actually do live black lives because they're held as black. You want to maximize the inclusion of those people. Okay, you don't want to have too many people that are actually living black lives that the algorithm leaves out. You're going to have some mistakes, just like, that in any justice system. That's the way that works. You're going to make some mistakes. But you're going to try to maximize, you're going to try to minimize those mistakes. You're going to try to maximize the amount of people who are actually living black lives who get certified as black. And you're also going to try to maximize the exclusion of people who do not look black and therefore do not live black lives. Right? So, what we have is a practical tool that is designed to do just that, to maximize inclusion of those who really are black and to maximize exclusion of those who are not black. Okay? Um, some people may object on political grounds of the four persons we're choosing as our benchmarks: Martin Luther King Jr., Cynthia McKinney for black people. You had to have male and female. And it really is a shame that we were not able to use the wife of Martin Luther King Jr., but he, like most black men for a long period of time, he didn't prefer, he didn't mate with someone who was unambiguously black. At the very least, Coretta Scott King was ambiguous. She was borderline, but we'll get to that later. So no, I couldn't use Martin Luther King Jr.'s wife, and so I just had to choose someone who I thought was well known, and we could get pictures of her with her natural hair texture, and who wasn't too controversial. It's not that I agree with everything that Martin Luther King Jr. did. It's not that I agree with everything that Cynthia McKinney has done. It's just that I had to get two physical specimens that people that were pretty well known, that were pretty representative of our phenotype. And the same thing with Prince Charles of Wales, and the late Lady Diana Spencer of England. She used to be Princess Diana before Charles divorced her. And then lastly, there might be people who are reticent. Like, why do we? Oh, you got this algorithm, and all you're gonna do is make it easier for surveillance technology to more quickly and accurately target black people for political activity or other racist purposes. Well, I mean, they're gonna do that anyway. They're always refining their technology on how to more accurately identify who is the problem to keeping us subordinated. Um, they don't seem to have the problem with identifying who's black and who's not. You could see that map that I showed you before. It's we're the people that have the problem. And so this is a technology to overcome that, because see, all technology is all technology is a way to compensate for something that any creature can't get done with the way things are currently configured. So they take what's on their person, on their, not their person, their body, and they look at, and around the environment, and they see, this is not working for me. I'm about to die. I'm not thriving, and so on. And so even bacteria, you know, um, they do this. They change. They use technology by changing their DNA whenever there's a threat. And protozoans are better engineers. They're better at technology than any person. So there's no reason for black people to feel like inferior. It has nothing to do with brain power. It just has to do with the fact that we don't have built into our um, facial recognition software. Again, something I got from Kofi. We don't have built into that the way other people do the recognition of other. Okay, that's not natural for us. The evidence is that it's very natural for non-black people, but it's just not natural for us. So we need a technology so that we can keep in the foremost of our minds how important that is. That it is the most important determinant of the quality of our life. Is that we're black and that there are these non-black people who have a problem with that. So and then we have to be clear on what black is, right? And so this is a technology that compensates for the fact that we don't have it naturally the way that other people do. And I think I've explained why we don't have it naturally. And then on top of that, we've had code inserted into our brain. It was very easy to do for us because we don't have a strong innate genetic xenophobia that non-black people do for us, right? So we have code inserted into our brain by non-black people telling us that race is not real, or telling us that um, we shouldn't believe our eyes. They believe their eyes. They arrange all their affairs based on what they see, in terms of who's black and who's not. But they've inserted code into our eyes that tells us that we should just disregard whether or not a person looks black to us. And so this is a technology that will help us get that piece of code out of our mind and to be able to see what we're looking at. Okay. Uh, and now, take this one off. And this will just rotate. This is just going to be going in the background. Um, there's a panoply of people. You might wonder, are they black or are they not? You know, um, and this tool is going to be able to help us determine that. Now, in this particular broadcast, we're not going to pick any of those people, but these are people to be thinking about. We're not going to score them, but Max is going to show you how to score it using actual people, but we're not going to score these people all the way through. Okay. Um, yeah, this ADOS movement of $5 Negroes, part two, not black, not ADOS. And as I've said before, um, we don't need a special wrench for this. Okay. So, yes, we have particular problems, but I think that if you want to frame ADOS as something that doesn't include race specifically, it's probably because you're not a black person, and that's going to be a problem. Uh, Anything else before I need to get right to it? Ooh, the links to the white paper will be up. Okay. See these people. This guy here. Let me just comment on each one. So there's J. Cole. We know he has a white parent, but is he black? Let's go to the next one. Sean King. Some people call him Talcum X. Even white people are really clear that he's not black. But I'm not going to. This is a writer. I'm not sure of her name. This is a Brazilian woman who was trying to get classified as black in Brazil for their programs. This is sort of obvious graphic. You can be dark skinned and not be a black person. Here we go with Rachel Dolezal. Um, she was able to perpetrate that fraud because we don't have a crisp definition of what is black. This woman here that you just saw, Elaine Wentworth. Well, I'll explain who she is later. You know who that is. You know who that is, Cardi B. Okay. Uh, yeah, you've got to be able to determine who the $5 black people are. And I was going to read the if then, yeah, but I'll do that a little later. Okay. There's an if then statement that's really important to this. But right now, what I want to do is um, get to the tool. So this is the only part where there's no workaround. I have to actually cast my whole screen to show you this worksheet. And so it's going to be a little messy, but it'll be the only time that's really messy. It's going to be like the last time. So I'm going to show you the worksheet, and then I'm going to let Kofi talk to you. So let me find it. There it is. Okay, so this is going to look a little bit funny. Let me take off this panoply here. All right. And in order to do that, I've got to go here. Okay, so you should now all be looking at the score sheet. Cree Tool, that's what it's called. Is he or she a black person? And so what you're going to do is you're going to rate 6 traits on the following scale, 0 to 3. This is just like a customer service survey. We've all done several of them. This is nothing new. So you're going to rate them between 0 and 3 according to whether or not they look closer or to Becky and Brian, to our standard bearers for the white type, Prince Charles and Lady Diana, and if so, if they look, if they're just a typical person of that type, you're going to rate them as zero. But if they look as a typical person like Martin Luther King Jr. or Cynthia McKinney, they get a three. And then there's the stuff in between, and you're going to rate them in six traits. Okay, and here are the six traits. So let's show you the six traits first. So you got hair coil, you got skin darkness, you got nose bridge, you got nose width, you got eye darkness, and lip thickness. Six traits. And you're going to rate them 0 to 3. Now, each one gets a certain amount of points. So if you rate somebody as 0, as having hair like, Prince Charles or Lady Diana, they're gonna get 0 points over here in this column. You're gonna multiply 35 times 0. Anything times 0 is 0. They get 0 points. But if you rate them as a 1, they got a little curl to their hair. They get one complete curl by the time it gets to their shoulder. Um, then they get 35 points. Cut the why, because 1 times 35 is 35. Yeah, hopefully you're getting it or catching on. If you rate him as 2, where it's not quite as tight as Martin Luther King's, but that's that type of hair came from black people. It's just not as tight as theirs. They got loosened somewhere with somebody's jeans. You rate them as a 2, and 2 times 35 is 70. And then finally, if they are, like the typical type of black hair that you're going to see in sub-Saharan Africa, west of the Horn, which means west of Ethiopia, Eritrea, Djibouti, and Somalia. If you rate them as just having typical black hair, then they get 3 times 35, which is 105. And that's the most difficult part. So you just I was going to make a little song of it, but my voice isn't back, so I can't sing it. But, if you just remember, I know because black people get skittish with math, even with just arithmetic. This is actually a channel for blurs, black nerds. So my target audience is not having a problem with 35, 70, and 105. Those are the multiples of 35. Okay, but then the rest of them get really easy. So skin darkness, you do the same thing. You rate them between how they look between, are they closer to Prince Charles or are they closer to Martin Luther King? And you multiply that by 20. It's not as important, and Max is going to explain why. So again, if you rate them as 0, they get 0 points. Rate them a 1, they get 20. 2, 40. If you rate them a 3, they get 60. And then every other trait is only 10. And so again, if you rate them at 0, they get 0, and then 10, 20, 30. Same thing for all the rest of them. At the bottom, you're going to have numbers here, like all through here, and you're going to add them all up, and you're going to get a total. Okay? And if that total is 195 or better, you got a black person. Yay! You should have some applause, right? But if it's below 195, they are not a black person. We're not going to say that they are white or whatever else. We're going to leave that to other people. All we're going to say for ourselves is that they're not black. And why did I choose 195? Well, it's 68% of the maximum. So if you were to get a 3 on all traits, you would get 285 points. Okay? And we're not trying to do more black, less black. I mean, yes, that's true, but again, you have to have some practical thing of making it. It's with diurnal, it's where it's just you're bifurcating it. I've forgotten the word that Max used. You either in or you're out. Okay. And that's what non-black people do to us too. Either you're in the non-black crowd or you're not, or you're in the black crowd or you're not. And 68% is not some random number. It's a scientifically chosen number, and Max is going to explain that too. If it's not in the excerpt that I'm showing, I will show you. That's been chosen because of the science. The science shows that if you take a white and black person and say they're biracial, the percentage that they have to look white before a white person will say, yeah, that's a white person, is 68%. And so that's the baseline that we're assuming is normal in order to identify somebody as yourself, at least 68%, which is kind of close to the 70 passing that we're all used to from school. But that's why that figure was chosen. These are not figures that were drawn out of the air. Okay, so that's how that works. Now I'm going to let Max break it down for you because he does just no, no. You didn't get to see the whole thing because I had this in the way. My goodness. Okay. Um, can you see it better now? I had my OBS broadcast studio up. Can you see it better now? Hair coil, 0 to 3, as I explained. You're going to multiply it by however you rate them. Skin darkness, nose bridge, nose width, eye darkness, lip thickness is the bottom there. To make sure everybody saw the whole thing. I forgot that it will show exactly what's on your screen. Passing score 195. 68% of the maximum 285. If you add up all these numbers, you're going to get a number. If you got 3 for all of them and you multiply them by the multipliers, you're going to get 285. 68% of that is 195. 195 is what's passing. If you don't get 195, you're not dealing with a black person. Okay. Now, I believe it's time to switch this graphic out and let Max explain it to you. Okay. Nope. Okay. All right, this is my second broadcast. I got a few things wrong. Okay, so here we go with Max explaining it. He's going to show you what the eyes look like. Here we go.
My pictures. Martin Luther King is going to be your baseline for a black male, and you're going to use Cynthia McKinney for your baseline of a black female. You're going to compare them. You're going to compare a male over the age of 6 to Martin Luther King Jr. and Prince Charles of England, and a female over the 6 years to former U.S. Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney and Lady Diana Spencer of England, in 6 traits: the tightness or coil of their hair, the darkness of their skin, the degree of concave arc forming bridge in their nose bridge. Now, what that means is you basically have 2 types of nose bridges. You have the nose bridge that curves. If you look at a black person's nose bridge, and then you have the other type that comes straight down from your forehead like a triangle or a hawk nose. Okay, so now the nose bridge that looks like a valley, that's the extreme end of the black spectrum of the nose, and the one that looks like a triangle or a hawk nose, that's the other end. You're gonna look at the width of the nose in proportion to distance of the eyes, and you're gonna look at the darkness of the eyes. The lighter the eyes, the less black that phenotype is. The thinner the nose in width, the less black the nose width is. The thickness of lips and the thickness of lips. So that's the 5 traits: the coil of the hair, the darkness of the skin, the degree of concave in their nose, the curve, the width, the nose width, the darkness of the darkness of eyes and the thickness of lips. So we're gonna look at somebody who has and what you do is you have 3 points. You have 3 points in each of the 5 phenotypes. So now, in coil of hair, this picture here of young Michael Jackson has a level 3, has 3 points in his hair. Now there are people on Earth who have even more coiled hair than him, but this is basically what you're looking at. Or you can look at Martin Luther King. You see his hair there? That's similar to Michael Jackson's. Now there are people with more coiled hair, but you know, you don't get points for having even more coil. It's just, are you there? Once you reach that, then then that person will have 3 points for their hair. Um, Now the next level in here, you see Raven Simone here. Her hair is a little bit less coiled, significantly less coiled than Michael Jackson's and Martin Luther King's. She would get 2 points for hair. 2 out of 3 points. Okay. And finally, you have Instagram star Bernice Burgos. Her hair is straight and shiny. Now, when you see somebody with shiny hair, that's an automatic. They get 1 point, like because black people generally don't. We don't have that shine in our hair. Our hair doesn't have that shiny gloss that goes with the non-black groups. So if you see somebody with hair like her, she'd get 1 point. She'd get 1 point. Now you there are 6 traits. Yeah, I said 5. The tightness and coil of hair, the darkness of your skin, the nose bridge curve, the width of your nose, the darkness of your eyes, and thickness of your lips. Yeah, 6. Okay. So you see Bernice Burgos here with she would get a 1 for her hair and sheen on it. Now we're gonna go to the skin. I'm gonna open up a text box so we can type out what we're doing. Yeah. So you got 3 points for hair, and each point you get you get 3 levels for hair, and on each level you get 35. You get 35 points on that. Okay. So the next is the darkness of skin. It's the same as hair, but instead of 35, you get 20. Okay. Now if we're discussing skin color, Normani here, where are we? Normani here is the highest level of of dark skin. There are darker people than her, but once you reach that level, that's the maximum, and you move on. Okay. That's Normani there. The next level here, you have OJ the Juice Man, rapper. He wouldn't have 3 of 3 skin. He'd have 2 of 3. He's significantly lighter than the baseline of black people. So when you would rate OJ, you would say, okay, he has 2 of 3 when you compare his skin to the baseline of black. Okay, and then lastly we have presidential candidate Kamala Harris. She's even lighter than OJ, and she'd have 1 of 3. Okay, so now, for instance, if you're rating a person now, and a person has, and you give them 3 of 3 for hair, then you would multiply. You would take the 35, and you would get 35 for each. That's 35 times 3, which would be 105. They would get 105 overall for that. Okay, so the next level is skin color. Actually, it's nose bridge. It's the concave nose. So this one, gave people the most confusion. Even me, it took me a little while to get it. But all this Cree tool basically is you're taking the facial recognition software that's built into your brain, and you're consciously reprogramming it, because the way that it is now is it's unconsciously programmed. It's programmed. Our facial recognition software in our brain is programmed, but it's not programmed by us. It's programmed by whoever else, by just listening to what other people say. So as it stands right now, we have the facial recognition software. We look at people, oh, this person is that, this person is this person is that. But the software is inadequate to determine what a black person is. So in using the Cree tool, what you're doing is you're reprogramming your facial recognition to be able to look at people and say, oh, I see what this person has and what this person doesn't have. Nose bridge. So now we're going to discuss the nose bridge. Again, you got 3 levels, and each level is worth 10 points. Okay? Now, Lupita Nyong'o, if you look at her nose, it has a nice little curve there. From her forehead down to her nostrils, it curves like a C or a U. She has the fully formed black nose bridge. She gets the full three level of that. She has a level 3 black nose bridge. Okay. Next, Rihanna. Also, Rihanna has a level 3 nose bridge. The curve from the top, down. I put 2 level 3s just to really compare it so we can kind of see what we're working with here. Okay, Lupita, level 3. Rihanna, level 3. Okay, next. Seti, Sarasuten Seti of YouTube fame. He has a level 2 nose bridge. I didn't get a profile of him because it was kind of hard to find them, but if you look at him from the front, you can still kind of see that his nose bridge is a little less curved than the previous shown sisters, Rihanna and Lupita. And lastly, you have this woman here who has a level 1 nose bridge. As you can see, it's more angular, hawk-like. She would get a 1. She has a level 1 nose bridge. So at the end, you would give her either 10 points if she had a level 1, 20 points, or 30 points if she has a level 3. Okay, we're definitely gonna be doing examples of this in the future, so we can like cement it. We're gonna make a fun game out of it. Okay, so that's nose bridges. This nose bridge here is a level 1 nose bridge. She would only get 10 points. Now, somebody like Prince Charles, who I'll show a little later, he wouldn't even get the 10 points. Now we have Nelly, rapper. We're gonna talk about the nose width, the width of the nose, from nostril to nostril. Okay. Yes, Nelly has a level 3 nose width. And like nose bridge, you get 10 points for each level. Thank you, AJ. Thank you, AJ. Glad to hear it. Okay, well, if y'all have any difficulties with this, let me know, because I know that it's a little tough at first. So definitely let me know if there's any like struggling going on with the understanding. Okay, so Nelly has a level 3 nose width. he has the blackest nose. Now, as I said in the other ones, you're gonna have people who have, you know, who have even wider noses. But it's not a race. We're not trying to see who's the blackest person in the world. We're not trying to make we're not trying to make a line of blackness and then give all the gold to the most black person. No, we're trying to see who's black and who's not black. You're either black or you're not. It's binary. You're a black human or you're a non-black human or you're one of the animals or bugs or anything like that. And that's what we're discussing here. Once you reach once you're in the black side of the spectrum, you're black, and then outside of the black spectrum, you're something else. Okay, so we're moving on from Nelly. He has that black nose. Next, it's going to be a level 2 nose with this guy from I forget his name, from the new movie of Superfly. He has a level 2 nose bridge. Trevor Jackson is his name. Trevor Jackson from Superfly has a level 2 nose width. He would get since he's level 2, he would get 20 points. If he was level 3, he'd get what? 30 points. It's simple arithmetic. Lastly is a level 1 nose width. It looks like it's very small. Okay. This here is Cara McCullough, Miss USA. I should have chosen a better picture because you're gonna have to look really close to see her nose width, but she would have a level 1 nose width. Okay. So the next ranking we're gonna talk about is eye darkness. Okay. 3 of 3 and 10. These are also now. What's with the numberings? Why does eye darkness, nose width, and nose bridge only get 10 points per level, whereas skin darkness gets 20 points per level, and hair coil gets 30 points per level, 35 points per level? Well, if you think about it, everybody on Earth who's not black has similar kinds of hair. Black people are the only ones who have the coiled hair. So hair and skin are one of the strongest are some of the strongest signals to a person's blackness. Nose bridge, nose width, and eye darkness, they're there too, but the coil in the hair, that it's really tough to find somebody who doesn't who has like level 1 of all the other features but level 3 hair. Like, it's really hard unless they're like an albino, and the albino, for instance, are we kind of look at them differently in the Cree tool. You can't use the tool for albinos the same way you use it for a normal black person, because that's like almost a birth defect. I don't know if it's specifically the same definition as a birth defect, but it's not. You're not looking at a normal black person. Yeah, we have our hair is most special. Okay, so eye darkness. We're gonna look at people's eyes now. Okay, so J. Cole, he has level 3 eyes. We deal with darkness and lightness. We're not talking about the actual color of the eye. But J. Cole has just regular dark eyes. So you look at him, he would get he has level 3 eyes. He would get 30 points for his eyes. Okay. J. Cole. Next you have Colin Kaepernick again. His eyes, if you can look a little bit closer to the screen, you'll see Colin Kaepernick's eyes are a little bit lighter, significantly lighter. He would get Like he has level 2 eyes, and he would get only 20 points compared to J. Cole. And lastly, you have this singer, um, Leona Lewis, oldest singer. Her eyes are really light. Her eyes are just, she has very light eyes. You don't even have to look close to see it that her eyes are lighter than the other two. And she has level 1 light eyes, and she would only get 10 points. Okay, so that's the eye darkness. That's 5, and the final phenotype that we look at is the thickness of lips. Again, 3 points, 3 levels, and 10 points. You're gonna compare them to. Let's look back now. Let's go back to Cynthia McKinney and Martin Luther King. Black folks, you look at our lips, and we have we have some meat in our lips. We have some flesh in there, and that's what we look at to determine a person's blackness in the lips category, the final category of blackness. Okay. So, level 3, Tory Lanez, Canadian singer. He, you look at him, he has fully formed black lips, level 3 black lips. He would get the 30 points in there. Next, Minister Malcolm X, our black shining prince. He had his lips are a little bit less thick than Tory Lanez. He wouldn't get the full. He doesn't have level 3 black lips. He has level 2. That's not to say that he's less black or anything. It's just his lips aren't his lips aren't at the end spectrum of black lips. Okay. And lastly, Princess Diana. She has level 1 lips, level 1 or below. Actually, she might have level 0 lips. Okay. She has between level 1 and level 0. Now.
Okay, so that was Kofi breaking down, how to compare, um, the 0 through 3 ratings, how those traits compare in different kinds of people. So it give you a sense of, how to score it. I'm going to let this go ahead and rotate again some more. Yeah, we're here. This is the Counter Racist Evolving Engineer platform here. We're doing the Cree colleagues, and we're discussing the ADOS movement and $5 Negroes, how important it is. This is part 2. Um, how important it is to be able to know whether or not you're looking at a black person or not, in terms of whether or not you even qualify as being someone who is due compensation for being ADOS. Um, and so I'm going to keep repeating the ADOS movement and $5 Negroes, because a $5 Negro is a takeoff of the $5 Indian, right? So you had obviously people who described themselves as European Americans or white people, and they went and yeah, after the Dawes Act was passed, and it was going to be clear that there was going to be land set aside, and later on there was legislation that they're getting free college educations and all kinds of things like that, and the casinos where they're making a lot of money. At any rate, white families were set up very early on by just paying $5 under the table to whoever was the government registrant, and they became whatever tribe that was. And now guess you look at all these supposedly Native American tribes, and there's just a bunch of white people getting all of the certainly non-black people getting all of the benefits of it. And that's what's going to happen to us if we don't identify who was black first. We don't do it second. It has to be done now. And you cannot allow people who are not black to frame this question. Okay? Of course they're going to want to include themselves in ADOS. I'm not saying they haven't had their share of issues, but if they're not black, they're not ADOS, and they really cannot. The idea is a wonderful idea, but if they're not black, the best they can do is be an ally. And you got to be careful about how they frame the issues when they're talking to people who have influence in making policy and law, because if because left to them, they're going to want to leave this thing nebulous as to who's black and who's not, because it's nebulous for them. But that'll have disastrous consequences for us. And again, I'm going to encourage you to go and look for my white paper on ScribD, on the Cree Tool, or where else is it? Archive.org. And it is also on academia.edu to explain, it's footnoted very well. And it will explain, I mean, it will happen at a breathtaking rate. It will be genocidal. Because even um, right now, as the paper explains, there are somewhere between 35 and 55,000 people each year, young people each year, who reclassify, they execute a classification from black to white. Now, in order to do that, obviously, these people don't look black, okay? They are obviously white people. But if you put in an incentive to say you're black instead of white, that's going to just incentivize all this racial admixture, and until they, and they're going to be white people, and it's going to be filled to the brim. All that's going to be getting reparations are people who are not black. So you can't let people who are ambiguous just leave that off the table. This is critical for us. We have to get this right first. Okay. The other thing I want to play for you is Kofi also broke down really well why you're not going to use the people on the Horn of Africa as a benchmark, as to say, well, you know, black people look all kinds of different ways. You look at the people in Ethiopia, we're genetically diverse, and that has nothing to do with mixing. Yes, it does. This is why you're not going to use the people on the Horn of Africa as typical of sub-Saharan Africa. And again, I think Kofi breaks this down really, really well, so I'm going to let him do that. And just give me a second to take off this running slideshow, and let's listen to Kofi again.
My pictures. Martin Luther King is going to be your baseline for a black male, and you're going to use Cynthia.
Whoops, wrong one. That was the same one. Okay, I'll find it. There we go.
Now, when we talk about sub-Saharan Africa, west of the Horn, and north of the Sahara, we're talking about people like these. People who are dark skinned, but they have dark skin, but they don't share the other features with black people. Like this guy here, he has, straight hair. He has straight hair. This guy here, light eyes. He doesn't. And we're gonna discuss these phenotypes going on. We're gonna discuss these phenotypes moving forward. Special note: the exclusion of persons of a typical appearance from the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Somalia, Djibouti, from the population of those with unambiguously black appearance is crucial to the definition of a black person. Why? It is crucial because many people use the term sub-Saharan Africa interchangeably with black African. It is also crucial because many people use the fact of the typical phenotype of people in the Horn to buttress their argument that their physical characteristics shared with people who inhabit the lands north of the Sahara Desert or in Europe are simply part of the unmixed greater genetic variation characteristic of black people that occurred through means other than sexual reproduction between populations of vastly differing appearances of skin color, facial features, and hair textures. The evidence contradicts that belief, however. There exists both genetic and historical evidence of racial admixture of the peoples in the region, and the genetic evidence of admixture of these populations through sexual means is strong, unlike that much weaker evidence for the accuracy of ancestry tests. Okay, and just looking at them anecdotally, when white folks seek to adopt children in Africa, the general group that they go for is what? Ethiopians. Everybody, it's Ethiopians that Africans generally go for first. And they're favored because their hair textures are similar to Europeans. Outside of their skin, their hair textures is similar. Their facial features, they look similar to groups that would have been mixed with white people and Europeans. And when those groups immigrate to the United States, non-black people prefer to hire them and and their assimilated teen and adult children over unambiguously black people.
Okay, so hopefully he explained that part. Okay, and I think this would be an ideal time to show this this graphic right here. We take this one off and put this one on right here. Remember this meme that was going all around on Facebook? I mean, it may have been on Twitter too. When the ancestors begin to manifest in the physical, and they, comparing Colin Kaepernick and Haile Selassie, and all I did was I took that meme and I just blocked off the person who posted it and all the people who liked it. Okay, yeah. I mean, obviously you can see that they have um, similar genetics. Colin Kaepernick and Haile Selassie. Colin Kaepernick could fit in certainly amongst you know ethnic groups that are not black on the Horn of Africa. He could probably fit in throughout the Arab world. Saudi Arabia, many places, maybe Palestinian. So I'll just come right out of. I will stop hiding and playing peekaboo on that. Clearly, Colin Kaepernick will not score as black. That is not a black person. I'm not telling you that he's a white person. I'm not telling you that he's an Arab. I'm simply telling you that he's not a black person. You leave it to other people or leave it to them to classify themselves otherwise. But yeah, there's a reason for that. And what I want to do is show you a contrast. Okay, so these are typical. They could probably fit right in with certain, the Amhara, maybe the Tigray in Ethiopia, maybe even to a certain extent, even though Colin is lighter skin than most Somalians, but maybe even to a certain extent with Somalians. But what I want to do is I'm going to contrast that with actual black people in Ethiopia and what has been their fate. So let me close this one and show you this. Okay, these are the Oromo people. I've heard people say Oromo, but I think I've heard Ethiopians actually use they pronounce it Oromo. And look at them. These are black people. These are black people, and they're demonstrating because they have been really they've suffered so much maltreatment in Ethiopia over so long, probably centuries, from other people in Ethiopia who up until now we haven't been able to say we're practicing anti-blackness. Why? Because we did not have a crisp definition of what a white person was. I'm sorry, a crisp definition of what a black person was. So these are black people, and they are being mistreated by other people in Ethiopia who are not black, who look like Colin Kaepernick. Okay, and it has only reached world attention in the 2010s, and but it's been terrible. Look at them; they're suffering the same things in Ethiopia on the Horn of Africa as black people, anywhere, because the people in power over there in Ethiopia, in the only country that they like to brag has been the only country that was never colonized by Europeans. Yeah, I wonder why, but look how they treat black people. Okay, again, this is us talking about the ADOS movement and $5 Negroes. Part 2. If you're not black, you are not ADOS. Every movement around the earth where if they're dealing with the non-black population around them, they need to be able to differentiate who is black and who is not. We need to be able to do that in every region. And when we come together as a federation, so when the African Union was doing their thing and they were letting Libya in and they were letting Muammar Gaddafi lead that thing and a lot of Arabs, incorrect. So whether we're federating as groups of black people or we're dealing with our own particular circumstances as black people in various parts of the world, it is critical that we know who is black and who is not. Okay? And I want to show you like another extreme manifestation of not doing that. take this off. I'm going to show you a little graphic, little picture. All right, now what this is I took screenshots of a film that was on Netflix. And by the fair use rules, I think I can go ahead and say what the name of the film was. It's called Dysfunctional People. Very appropriate title for the movie. And the movie was basically about, it was like the big chill only for black people. So what you had is a reunion of people who had gone to college together, and the cause of the reunion was the death of one of their classmates. And so in the two pictures here, what you see is three women. This woman in the purple shirts in both pictures, the upper one and then the bottom. And she actually didn't go to college with the people in the room who were there at the repast after the funeral. And but she was, she knew some of the people, and so she was trying to enter into a conversation with some of them. And so in the bottom picture, you see her entering into a conversation with two of the people who knew the person who was deceased, for whom the funeral was being held in the repast. And she goes over to them and she says, it must be so wonderful that you're all getting a chance to get back together. And the shorter woman over here, the darker skinned black woman who's wearing the black shirt, she's it was kind of funny. She said, wonderful, it's for a damn funeral. And that, every time I see that, it cracks me up. It was funny. But moving on. So then the young lady in the purple, who, we'd have to rate ourselves, wouldn't we? But I want to show you how ridiculous it could get. She asked the woman in this center, right here, the tall woman in the center. She says, well, because she's just trying to have a conversation. And so she says, well, if you don't mind my asking, what made you decide to attend? Because they all went to Howard. I didn't say that. There's all these people in the deceased had gone to Howard, historically black university. So, anyways, back to where I was. The young woman in the purple asked the woman in the center, if you don't mind my asking, what made you decide to go to a historically black college? And the woman that's in the center replies, I'm black. And then, she rolled her eyes, and then the shorter woman rolled her eyes as if, oh my goodness, how ridiculous that she just didn't even know that she was black. This is the kind of absurdity to which we are subjected. And I have had those kinds of occasions happen in my own life, where I remember I was attending training for some job, when I was in my 20s. And I assumed the woman in charge of the trainees was this white woman. And somehow somebody brought it to my, so she's black. And then I had to, so I had, just like the woman in this movie here in Dysfunctional People, she went away embarrassed because she actually said what was the truth. But she actually said that her eyes were looking at a white person, certainly not a black person, and she said she was white. And by saying that, she was made to feel like she was crazy, and she was embarrassed. That happened to me when I was training. I've had a couple of those experiences. I'm going to show you another video where this is explained, that this is what happened. This has been happening for so long. I'm going to go back in history. I'm going to show you that when integration, that whole integration desegregation thing kicked off in the early 1950s, where that really kicked off, and how that was at play even with that. And so when you have people who are not black framing policy or strategies for us, you end up with problems. And I'm going to show, just like we're having with this ADOS movement and $5 Negroes. We had this problem back in the beginning of the civil rights movement at the middle of the 20th century. I'm going to show you, evidence of that. And so whenever I'm not sure where I'm going, I put up the panoply. I wanted to to just give a little bit more information on the nose thing. I think that Kofi did a fantastic job on explaining the nose. The examples he chose were wonderful. But this is certainly something that this was drawn by some white person probably 100 years ago, maybe more than that. And, of course, they exalt their type, but obviously, they were always looking at the gradations in nose between themselves, the hawk nose, and the far end that they call the classic Greek, and then all of it, maybe you got a little indentation that might be Roman, and then after that or is Nordic, and so on until you get to the Asian, which is they're kind of in between the hawk nose and that they are actually have documents on that. Their nose bridge, their what they call the craniology. Their nose bridge is a hybrid between a white person and or a European American and what we call a Negro or a black person. But so you see the nice little C here, and this curve, and then you see the hawk nose, and so you've got gradations in between. Okay, so this is something that people have been noticing for a long time, and for whatever reason we haven't. And the first time it was really like starkly brought to my attention and made me really realize it had to be included. And then I'll talk about the other facial features. Is I was in a nail shop that was run by Vietnamese, and I had a male nail tech. And I usually don't. You try to encourage. I would engage them, but oh, so they had the television on. I'm not a television watcher, and I try to take every opportunity to do some learning. So I'll do a little laboratory, and they won't know what's going on. So the television was on, and there was some movie on, and Wentworth Miller was playing in some film, and I knew that he was a person that was supposedly black. That man is blue-eyed white man, certainly not a black person, but because he has a quote unquote, you're gonna tell me he has a black father, some light skinned dude, and he has a white parent. Not just light skin, but all the alleles that go with it. He mixed in, and this guy came out, white. And so I'm looking at him at the television in this in the nail shop, and so I just asked around. I said, "Does he look black to you?" And they all looked shocked. All these Asians. They said, who? And they kept making me point him out. I said, him. The people say he's black. They say he black. He black. He black. Okay, well then that opened up the whole Pandora's box, and all of a sudden the male nail tech wanted to tell me that he didn't look. First of all, that Wentworth Miller didn't look black. He wasn't black, but he wanted to engage me about the appearance of his son, because this man was married to a white woman, and but his complaint was that they had a son together and that the son looked black. And so he went out to his car to get a photograph of his son out of his trunk to bring it into the nail shop to show me his son. Okay? And the main thing he wanted to emphasize for me, and I had not heard this before, I didn't understand, because to me, a lot of Asians have flat noses, right? And wide ones too. And so he just kept saying he looked black, and I didn't see it. And he said, "Look at his nose, look at his nose right there." And he pointed to the bridge. See, he had black, yes, he had black nose bridge. See how flat it is? See how flat it is? And he was really emphasizing that, and that is what kicked it off for me. And then I really started to notice that was a signal trait in black people. And then in terms of facial features, in general, so what we know from the science is that non-black people rate facial features to be more important in terms of identifying a black person than skin color. So the composite of facial features is more important than skin color, and that's why we're including it. We didn't want to make it could have been simpler if we'd have simply said hair texture and skin color, but the science on that, and then you just know yourself in your just in your chest, that those facial features, if they look like Yaphet Kotto or Wesley Snipes, that's going to go a long ways towards making them look black, depending upon their hair texture and their coloring. And there's ancient evidence on that. There are ancient historians who are saying that the Negro type belongs to the morphology. There are actually white Negroes because it's the look on their face, the composite of the facial features. Now I'm not going to say that there are white Negroes. That's a contradiction in terms. I'm only saying that we cannot leave off facial features just to make it simple, because we'll be excluding too many people who actually are treated, who look black, and therefore live a black life. And that's going to be important, as we with the ADOS movement and the $5 Negroes. Okay. Where do we go next? All right. So, yeah, I know I've been at this for an hour and 40 minutes, but we've probably got about 25, 30 more minutes left. Um, as I said, wherever you are on the earth, it's very important to be able to define who's black and who's not. So in Brazil, right around the mid noughts, 2005, 2006, something like that. That's when black people there, because they had this myth of being a colorblind society. And finally, the black people said, "Colorblind, my behind," right? And so they eventually got to the point where they put some what we would call affirmative action programs in place. And so getting into university, their university is free there. That's a big deal. And you could never probably see black people in there. And they had this legislation that would allow people to, if you were black, you got certain preferences. They were, to get into university. But they also had set asides for jobs and government jobs and so on for black people. But they had to identify who were black people. So now it's becoming a profitable thing to be a black person. Now Brazil like it's got mostly a bunch of mixed people. Now it does have some black people there, okay, but the mixed people there don't live the same lives as black people there. So they had to decide whether or not if people were self-identifying as black were actually black. In other words, did they look black? Let me take this off. Oops, wrong. Where is that so that I can get rid of that? I want to get rid of that. Oh. Okay, I want to take care of that. All right, so let's take a look at what happened in Brazil. Okay, it's going to be in three different parts, and here we go. I know why I didn't do it. Okay, here we go.
Hello, I'm Daljit Dhaliwal, and welcome to Wide Angle. The United States has been wrestling with the role of affirmative action in education for decades. Recent Supreme Court rulings have shown that the issue is still controversial and race-based quotas have never been widely accepted. Tonight we go to Brazil, one of the world's most racially mixed societies. Their new civil rights movement is embracing quotas and pushing aggressive legislation that aims to counter discrimination. Racial harmony in Brazil may be alive and well, but equal opportunity is not.
I want you to look, because some of the people in this crowd are black, but some are not. Take a good look.
Vive a mim. Nós sabemos que a educação é que liberta. A educação é que emancipa.
Hello, I'm Daljit Dhaliwal, and welcome to Wide Angle.
Ela, sabe? E eu acho que ela tem que estudar muito para tentar realmente.
4, 5 meses, onde a gente vai estar? Onde a Karine vai estar?
Lá na UNB.
Vamos ver.
Se Deus quiser. Se Deus quiser.
In Ceilândia, on the outskirts of Brasilia, 17-year-old Karine da Silva hopes to be the first in her family to attend Federal University. Though light-skinned, she is thinking about applying under the quota system.
Eu era bem gordinha, eu era obesa. Nossa, aí eu peguei, falei, não, vou fazer regime e tal. Eu pensei, né? Aí eu peguei e comecei a fazer regime, eu fiz regime, até hoje ainda vivo de regime, sabe? Morro de medo de engordar. Por isso que eu tenho escolhido nutrição, né? Porque eu me interessei por esse negócio de alimentação, essas coisas. Eu quero crescer muito na vida, eu não quero ficar aqui nessa mesmice, eu quero evoluir.
Okay, so before I play the third segment, so now you see this girl who Yeah, you could see a little flatness in her nose, but I mean, in any way, would you consider that a black woman? I don't. I think most people would consider her white, but certainly, if not white, definitely not black. But she wants in. She wants a piece of it. She wants to become a $5 Negro. Again, this is why we have the problem: the ADOS movement and the $5 Negroes. Who's black? If you're not black, you can't be ADOS in the United States. Just like what's happening, that I'm showing what's happening in Brazil. This was aired in 2008 on whatever it said in the first segment. I think it was Wide Lens on PBS. But here's the third segment, and in this third segment, you're going to see interesting. You're going to see people. You're going to see a lot of the obviously hybridized, otherwise known as, there's so many terms in Brazil, the Portuguese terms, but we just call them in between. We call them hybrids or mixed people or mulattoes and stuff. So here they're questioning what makes a black person, and everybody's trying to, all these mixed people or white people are trying to qualify as black, or they're trying to just say we shouldn't be having this at all. This is not nonsense. The black people don't need that. We don't need this in our society. And this is what we're going to face in the United States. That's what we have to get it right before the program begins to be built. We cannot have in the ADOS movement $5 Negroes. So here we go with the third segment.
Eu sou amarelo, sou branco, eu sou pardo. Se você coloca lá, preenche o cadastro, se declarando negro, mas a gente está vendo assim, você é um pouco amarelo, mas se declarou negro. E de repente lá nas fotos, ele viu todos os critérios, a ficha está negro. Aí de repente veio um negro e se declarou amarelo. E quer entrar pelo sistema de cotas que é negro. Aí a banca também pode reprovar.
Eu queria saber mais sim sobre os critérios das cotas, porque, sim, como eu sou branco, entre aspas assim, né, sou afrodescendente também, mas existem brancos assim como eu, como existem negros que não têm condições.
Eu me julgo negro. Qual vai ser o critério que ele vai usar para ver se eu sou ou não?
Então o Felipe pode ser aceito e a moça aqui não pode ser aceita. Eu queria saber por que essa diferença.
Né, essa jovem e aquela ali, né, ambas podem se reconhecer como afrodescendentes. Né, e a miscigenação é muito grande. Só que na hora que nós vamos procurar emprego ou mesmo entrar em algum shopping, que já aconteceu comigo, né, tem aquela questão do racismo.
Você não acha que talvez essas cotas, se fosse para ser justo mesmo, ela não deveria ser para os pobres, para as mulheres?
Ah, ela é uma negra, ela precisa de uma chance porque ela é negra? Será que eu vou gostar de ser analisada por um grupo de pessoas que nem gostam da raça negra, mas querem vantagens? São as vantagens que vocês estão oferecendo. E, na verdade, vocês vão...
Right. So, did you hear that? So, I mean, it was interesting what the young woman at the end said. I almost want to play it again for you. But it was interesting. It was interesting because she... there are two parts to it that were interesting. One is that she made the point at the end that there are people who hate black people who still want to qualify as black so they can get the stuff. That's going to happen. And I'm sure it has happened. But the other part was interesting to me because she said, well, I don't want to get something just because somebody says I'm black, that I need help just because I'm black. You think I want to be looked at that way? And I thought, this is an interesting thing. This is something that a non-black person pretty much would say, or maybe a very confused black person. But these people who want to play in the middle, this is the type of thing that they would say, right? They don't want, because I can guarantee you, if you're an unambiguously black person, you want help on the basis of the fact that you're black because you've been targeted because you've been black. If you've been targeted because you have been black, then yes, you want help that identifies you as someone who needs help because you are black, because of the mistreatment was on that basis. But if you're in the middle, you're kind of in between. I think in the end what she was saying is, I'm going to play my bets. I think that even with these little affirmative action programs, based on what I know, I don't want to be black. You can continue to see me as something in between. I don't want to, I'm not going to cast my lot with black folks right now. Now, when black people become more powerful, as we become the premier scientists on the planet, and I'm going to read an if-then statement at the end that explains what I mean by that, they'll probably change their tune. But we should not change ours. A black person is a black person, It's not a person who you know, just like uh, Ward Connolly, Larry Elder, Armstrong Williams, all the quote unquote black conservatives, you know, no matter how much they kiss up to non-black people, no matter how much they do that, they're never ever going to be regarded as one of them because they're not. And the same thing for us. I welcome people treating us correctly. I welcome people being allies. I welcome people who are not black dedicating their lives to correcting the ship for black people. Great, wonderful. But that doesn't make you black. It never will. And we should never lose sight of that. Just like non black people never lose sight of it. Okay? Um, Let me go back to my little panoply because that's my like sort of go to while I'm in between. Just put on your mind who's black and who's not. Again, we're not going to score these people today, but we will be scoring some of them in future videos. And if you haven't already subscribed to Max's channel, obviously I hope you see the value in doing so. You will see his channel in my lineup on the home screen. Yeah, so because we're gonna be scoring people that we just want to score, but also if you send us pictures or you send us names of celebrities that you would like to score, we'll certainly do that. Now, I want to talk about some more about the danger of having these $5, you know, the Yados movement and $5 Negroes, having them at the forefront of the thing. Because I want to talk about people who are in policy making or opinion making positions. Let's see if I have that here so I can show you the history of that. Here we go. Let me take this one off and we'll just hone in on the policymakers. One second here. But I had it lined up better than this, but it's okay. We'll get there. Just be patient with me, please. No, I have it. I just saw it. There we go. Okay. Here we go. You young people probably do not recognize who this is, but this is Adam Clayton Powell, and he was supposedly like the first black congressman. Okay. Does that look like a black man to you? And, you know, he presided during a time in which the primary emphasis was in opening the doors to white institutions for black people. And, you know, it's a lot of the legislation. It's a lot of the work. And I will say at the start, because this is going to be a preview to the actual history of how that happened and how it was shepherded by non-black people who were $5 Negroes. If you happen to look like this, if you happen to be, you know, a person who is not black but who's self-identifying as black, it's going to be to your advantage. Your mind is going to naturally go to the place of, I want to be let into the white institutions, because the likelihood of it is that you will be. It's a mere formality. But if you're an unambiguously black person, that probably is not where your mind is going to go. Your mind is probably going to go, I am treated so differently. And what I really want is to be left alone, to develop on my own. I want you to stop interfering. I want you to stop bombing me. I want to be able to defend myself against your bombing, against your poisoning. I want equal facilities. That's separate but equal stuff that you have in the books. That's fine with me if it's equal. Okay? That's what we want. If you're an unambiguously black person, you're probably not looking forward to spending a lot of time around people who you know have an innate hostility towards you. But if you are looking like this, you're not going to have those kind of reservations. Let's go to the next one. This woman, this is modern. So her name is Elaine Winterroth. She was the editor for Essence magazine for beauty and fashion. So she was making decisions as to what should be considered beautiful and fashionable for black women. I have a problem with that. I think we all should. Because what is your mental framework and orientation going to be if you look like that? When you have a decision as to whether or not to include black women with natural hairstyles without having to, yank, pop, crackle, pop, with the comb through your hair to get it, are you going to be making those decisions? Are you going to be is it going to be first in your mind to make sure that you have brown to dark skinned women, or the women who are most typical of black people in the Americas in that magazine? Should she have been in the position of editor of fashion and beauty in Essence magazine? I don't think so. Next slide. My goodness. This was the president, the national president of the NAACP. Again, we're going to probably be knocking on doors and complaining about the status of our children in schools that are operated by white folks, instead of realizing that we're probably better off doing our own thing and wanting to make sure that within our schools we are taking care of the special needs of black children who've been traumatized in their families of origin because of the economic circumstances of anti-blackness. Okay, we're going to want to protect them from the assaults of these anti-black white teachers and principals, and all, the fact that they get suspended and disciplined more often. They don't learn about themselves. But if you look like this, you're probably just going to want to be included because you're very close, and it's just a formality. This is Benjamin Jealous, former national president of the NAACP. I don't know about Booker T. Washington. That's a historical figure. This is probably a colorized photo. We do know that he is said to have had a father, an unknown father, who was white. He had very light colored eyes. We don't really know what the color of his skin was because the technology of chromatography in photography didn't even get close to being accurate for anybody but white Europeans until I think the 80s. So if you're looking at a picture of somebody in the early 20th century, it's hard to tell what his skin color is. And so we have to be careful about historical figures. So I really don't know about Booker T. Washington. I don't know. But here's another photo of him. You get to see his hair a little bit better. We don't know his color. His hair definitely is not a 3. It's definitely a 2. Some people might even not. I would, it's a little bit longer. That I think is sort of like Raven Simone's hair. But again, I wouldn't score him because I can't. I see that he has the thin lips, and I'm looking at his nose, but not not knowing what his skin color is. I'm not sure what the math on that would be. So we have to be careful about these historical figures. Some of them we don't have to be careful with. Like if there's some very unambiguously black people who were photographs back then, and I'm going to show you some of them in this broadcast. But he was a policymaker who was had a white father. But definitely this is an opinion maker. Colin Kaepernick, we've already talked about him. And as Max pointed out in his video that I would encourage you to go look at, that he's standing next to his girlfriend who's Egyptian. Don't they look like the same people to you? And he was on one knee, and there were people who were boycotting because Cap didn't get a contract. He didn't get a contract as a backup quarterback, but he did get that Nike commercial, and everybody thought it really worked. Now let me tell you something. There's a couple things about that. Number one is that advertisement really amounted to he gave in. because it certainly wasn't about black people. It was an all lives matter. It doesn't matter if you have a physical disability, where you were born, if you were Muslim, doesn't matter your religion. It was an all lives matter thing. It was not about black people, which you would, again, he's not a black man. So that really wasn't a hard decision for him. That's number one. Number two, what I want to do is I want to compare what he was paid money for that. He's making money off of that. Okay, and I want to compare that take a knee movement that he started and what happened with him, where he got this big ad from Nike, to the closest thing that I can think of, right? And that is the 1968 fists in the air John Carlos Tommy Smith moment at the 1968 Olympic Games in Mexico City. Now, if you learn about their life stories, they weren't offered any contracts. The FBI was surveilling them. They were calling wives and threatening lives, and they were not allowed to get jobs. It was hard for them to get a job washing cars. They were starving. They couldn't pay their rent. And all of that pressure led John Carlos's wife to commit suicide. This is not what happened to Colin Kaepernick. Had he been an unambiguously black man, I think that is what would have happened to him as a result of making that stand. And when Rodney Harrison, who was an NFL player, said that Colin Kaepernick did not understand what black people go through, he was correct, although everybody got all over him and said, "What are you talking about? He's black." You see, this is what happens when we don't have a crisp definition of what a black person is. Okay? You don't want your policymakers and opinion makers to be for black people to be non-black people. This man may not be very well known to you. I interviewed him on my old platform at Blog Talk Radio. His name is Eduardo Bonilla Silva, and he wrote a book called Colorblind Racism. And so, he has quite a bit of currency within academia. He came on my program and said he was a black man. He's from Puerto Rico. He's married to a Palestinian woman. He's not black. And, I've seen pictures of him before he started to gray. And, his hair is definitely straight. He gets his, and if you have straight hair, if you have, if you have straight hair with just like some waviness to it, you're not a black person. Because if you go back to the scale, you get 35 points for each level. Okay. And so if you get a 0 on hair, you got to whack off 105 points. And so that takes you out of the running, because remember, you have to be 195 to pass. If you start with 285, no one can afford to lose more than 90 points and be black. You can't lose more than 90 points. That's a shortcut. Once you get to 90, that's the limit. If you're over 90 points of deductions, that means you're not going to make the 195. So once you get to a 0 on hair, you have to take off 105 points. It's over. You don't even need to look at anything else. This is not a black man. Do we even need to say anything about Kamala Harris? This is her typical coloring without sun. I don't even know if I should say anything, but this is what I meant about people giving lectures on ancient African history. And if you go online, you'll see him wearing hats mostly. This man has straight hair. Not a black person. Already, 105 off the top. He has straight, shiny hair. And a lot of time, he wears a lot of jewelry and stuff that is supposed to connect him to his Native American history, but I'm sure he doesn't mean black Native Americans. This is Sean King. Here we go again. I'm sure Sean King, I bet Sean King will really latch on to the ADOS movement because he's a $5 Negro. He is the quintessential $5 Negro. White folks, Max brought it to my attention that white folks had a Reddit thread that was hilarious, where white folks were just going crazy over it. White folks claim him. They say he's white. I'm gonna leave it to them to say that, but he's certainly not black. He's the one who's getting a lot of airplay. There are people who are saying things that are far more important in terms of what the analysis of the problem is and the solution, but they're not going to get what he gets because we've always been encouraged to promote people who look like this. And I'm going to say this about Sean King. I've seen all these pictures, and white folks are claiming him. He's not black, definitely not. When I look at him, I can see somewhere in there that he had somebody black in his bread box. I mean, I can see it somewhere way back in there, but that doesn't make you black. He's not black. Okay. Yes, that may be the last of the. Oh no, no, no. Here we go with another person. Is not a. You cannot say he is unambiguously black. This is Thurgood Marshall, the famed Supreme Court justice, and again he presided. He was on the court. He was on SCOTUS when we were doing all of the desegregation. And I think he was married a couple of times. The second time, I think he married a white woman. But I mean, if you look like this, what's going to be in your mindset is just open the door. I look like you. Stop this. You're not probably going to be so much about. I think these people hate me, and I think I need to have my own thing. And I want to prove to you that that's where black people were. This is W.E.B. Du Bois. Again, we have to be careful because chromatography was not that accurate back then. He certainly doesn't look like a black man here, but let's look at a picture of him when he was a young man. It's black there, so you have to be careful about the old pictures sometimes. Okay, so now we're back at the beginning, and this is the problem with having $5 Negroes in the ADOS movement. This is the problem. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you historically how having them in positions to formulate strategy, to be in a position to influence opinion and policy, I'm going to show you like the beginnings of it. And I'm going to go back in time. So, we've kind of dealt with now the Sean Kings, the Elaine Winterroths. But let's go back to the middle of the 20th century when, the civil rights movement was first kicking off. And you wonder, how did that start? How did all that desegregation of lunch counters and stores and schools all over the country and universities and everything, how did that stop? It started in Virginia with a group of students who were striking. Let me take this off so I can get your attention. Oh, well, I'll just keep talking. It started in Virginia, and what happened is that the daughter of a man named Vernon Johns, not the daughter, the niece of a man named Vernon Johns, who was the minister at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church before Martin Luther King got there, and who was quite a rabble rouser. And he's the one who set up the people to be ready to do that thing. But at any rate, he had left the church, and he was traveling around the country. But he had a niece named Barbara Johns, and she went to school in Virginia, and she was a chip off her uncle's block. And they had been complaining for some time because they would watch their white classmates not have to walk 5 miles to school and get school buses. They would sit in classrooms that were next to cow pastures where they could smell the cow dung, next to actual pig pens, like literal pig pens. They would be in classrooms where there was insufficient heating, where it was a coal heater, and if you were too close to it, you were burning up. But if you were too far back in the classroom, you were cold. The roof was falling down. And so they had for many years been petitioning the school board, the all-white school board, could you please give us adequate facilities and stop giving us these old textbooks? And the school board was putting them off and not listening to them. And so finally, they had enough, and Barbara Johns led a walkout. This is how it all started. And the parents weren't behind it. It was the students. And what they wanted was, we're not going to school anymore until you take our request seriously. We want we want equal facilities. This is what they wanted. Okay? And I'm going to show you the role that these $5 Negroes played in turning that whole thing into a desegregation thing, an integration policy. Okay? So that's what I'm going to show you next. And I'll also obviously have to figure out how to take this off and put on the right one. Okay, so we're going to take him off. And I'm going to show you this man. He was a member of the whole thing. He was a leader of what I was just talking about. He's an older man now talking about it. And you can find this video. This should be fair use. You can find this video at the Virginia Commonwealth University Digital Archives. Okay, and so he's talking about the history of how this actually happened. His name is John Stokes. Here we go.
And amazingly enough, what sort of bothered me initially was the fact that the NAACP group members tried to talk us out of it. They said, "How do you know what you're doing is right?" And we thought they were trying to talk us out of it. Actually, they were testing us to see how strong we were.
Look at that picture. Look
and
at
of course,
those
when
white
they
men.
told us that the only way they could take the case
important.
would be to take it for the purpose of integration, we had to take a vote on that. And we voted on everything before we went forward as a group.
Okay, now the reason I wanted to show that is I wanted to show you the two men that he's going to be talking about in this second segment. Those look like white men to you, right? They look like white men to me, right? So those are people from the NAACP that had come, they had this big strike, and it was getting to be a big story in the media, and so they needed some legal representation, but they didn't have any money. These were poor black folks. So somebody made a call to the NAACP and hoped that they would send some lawyers to help them, and the NAACP sent those men that you saw, okay? And you heard Mr. Stokes say that they were told that the only way the NAACP would represent them legally is if they dropped the demands for equal accommodations. In other words, they were cool. The black students wanted separate but equal. That's what they had been. That's what the whole thing was about. But the NAACP delivered the message through these men that you saw. We will help you. You students are doing great work here. But what you have to do is you have to change your demand and stop asking for equal accommodations, equal facilities. But you have to change it and say that you want to be able to attend white schools. Now, what does this have to do with ADOS and $5 Negroes? Well, let's watch the second part.
The Robinson boy, he walked the dogs on us that night. He was something, In fact, amazingly enough, I said something that got very ashamed of in later years. Special Robinson was so hard on us, telling us, you don't know what you're doing, and that's what he started with. Then he said, some of the students sometimes, do things and then they regret it and things of that nature. So then near the end of his conversation, I raised my hand. I said, "Sir," he said, "Yes." I said, "I can understand why you are having a problem with us." And he said, "Why is that?" I said, "Because you're white." And he never corrected me. He was such a man, he never corrected me. Reverend Grissom called me to the side. He said, "Young Stokes, let me tell you one thing. There are such people as light-complected Negroes, They were with Negroes, they're not black, And I felt like I wanted to go through the floor. Here I am, the president of the New Founders of America, and here I misinterpreted who this man was. And because I permitted my emotions, I realized then I had permitted my emotion to get in the way of my thinking pattern. And
Wow. You see? Do you see how turned around we are? He got embarrassed because he identified what he was looking at, like any normal, intelligent creature would do. Any normal, intelligent person, you look at something and you determine what it is by its characteristics. And who he looked at was a white man. And yet he got embarrassed because he walked away thinking that he was incorrect. because we had that code inserted in our brain to override what we see, right? And so he walked away embarrassed that he made a statement that was actually true, and walked away thinking that he was actually incorrect. Just ridiculous. But you see, remember what he complained about. He said that those men, that particular man that he supposedly had misidentified as white, was giving them a hard time on what they wanted. And he said, it's because you're white. And then he got supposedly corrected. No, we're just completely turned around. No, of course, this is the problem you have when you have $5 Negroes leading strategy. Okay? And the final thing I want to show you is just how old this is. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a picture. I'm going to show you several pictures. I'm going to show you a slideshow of the propaganda that was being used to drum up opposition to slavery in the South. And it was $5 Negroes. In order to convince non-black people, at that time they called themselves white, and people still do. In order to convince, I'm going to use the word white this time, in order to convince white folks to have a policy that will benefit black people, you have to convince them that it's actually going to benefit non-black people. That's the way the whole thing is set up, and that's what will happen this time. So let me show you the propaganda that was used in order to convince non-black people to stop slavery. These were the pictures of the poor Negro slaves that needed, slave children that needed help. They needed to have slavery end because these poor Negro children. Let me show you the pictures. Those are supposedly Negro slave children. This is what was used to drum up support or opposition to slavery. Now there we see a black slave child with a non-black child, a white child. But she's a $5 Negro, and she shouldn't be in slavery. Numerous pictures. This is a collage. Here you obviously see a black man in the center. But those children and the woman around them, those are supposed to be Negroes as well. And then you see two pictures to the side. This is the propaganda that was used. Yes, white people are motivated to make it less difficult to include their own. Okay? The lives of these people were never the same. And I can prove this too, but that's beyond the scope of this broadcast. There was never a time, even during the one-drop rule in the United States, whereby people who did not look black lived the same lives as unambiguously black people. Yeah, there were a few. Yeah, maybe yes, there were some social strictures against it, and there are all these movies made about people being. But the reality of it is, first of all, a lot of them passed, and secondly, white people just aren't disposed. It's not natural for them. They're just not disposed to treat people who look like them like black people. There's just a difference. It's the same way that any creature, a tiger is not disposed to treating an antelope like a tiger. A tiger is not disposed to treating a lion like a tiger. That's just not natural. Now we're different because we take in the whole range of Homo sapienness because we're the first peoples. But you have to understand that these peoples are different. They understand that there's some fundamental differences between us. There are fundamental differences between us that go beyond just how we look, because there are groups of genes that, and I always get them confused. I still get the haplogroup and haplotype, but they tend to be transmitted. They're different places. They're different DNA sentences at different places on chromosomes, sometimes on the same chromosome, but they tend to be inherited almost at the same time. And so the things that code for appearance almost always code for all kinds of other things too. This is a reason, that we, besides just facial appearance, of course, physically we're different in terms of our bone density, our muscularity, the way we metabolize vitamin D, sugar, salt, a whole lot of things. But also, there are some predispositions of mind, languages that connect better to our ways of thinking. These differences, these things, whether people are conscious of them or not, they know that the basic break in the types of people, we're down to basically two races. Now there are sub races, but the main break, if you look at that map that I showed earlier, is, and I'll show it again for the purpose. The main break, the main difference is not white non-white, it's black non-black. Singapore and Japan are at the top of the list of nations for life expectancy. So, yeah, this is to remind you the race is real. There's the proof of it. And we need people in the ADOS movement to recognize that, and we need to not be having $5 Negroes try to tell us which way to go on that. Okay, that's all I have. I thought it would last about this long, 2 hours and 20 minutes. Yeah, we've been talking about the ADOS movement and $5 Negroes. If you're not black, you're not ADOS, and it is extremely important to know that you're black. And now we have a way to do it. Okay, we have a black bone technology. It's called the Cree Tool. Sue me. I created it, so I named it after myself. And you'll be able to find that. You'll be able to click on the links. Just give me about 20 minutes to, once it archives up to YouTube, and I will put the links in the description. I need to thank someone. I've already thanked Max, but I also want to. I'm not sure how he wants to be identified. But I need to thank Clarence H, aka Codified Gamer, because he's really been helping me understand this platform. I don't know how well I did. I'm sure he will give me. I'm sure he will give me some feedback that will help me improve. But he was just really, really helpful in terms of helping me understand this platform. Listen, if you found this video helpful, please like it and subscribe so you know the next time I'm coming on. The plan is to come on every Friday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And if you're subscribed, you'll see that little bell, because I cannot do it in advance. It doesn't work with my encoder. And listen, this is what I need from you. What I need from you is to engage me in the comments. If you didn't understand something, if you disagree with it, but most of all, what I need you to do is tell me in the comments. Who would you like to see rated? Who would you like to see scored? And maybe the people you want to see scored is just so you can disprove the validity of this algorithm. And hey, you might be right. Okay. And if you're right, I'm like most people. I don't like to be wrong, but I try to, as a matter of, I try to be a principled person. If I'm wrong, I try to say I'm wrong. I've tested this and retested this thing, and I think it works. But if you can prove to me that it's not, that's the way it goes. Just like I disagreed with Frances Welsing on her fundamental thing. I agree with her on some stuff. But yeah, so that's what I need from you. I need from you in the comments. Tell me who you would like to see rated. I don't care what your motivations are. Maybe you just are confused. Maybe you're just curious. You find the whole thing fun. It's fun to me. So yeah, tell me who you'd like to see rated, and tell me what you don't understand or what you disagree with. But yeah, engage me in the comments. And like I said, within the next week or two, I'll be able to take your calls. So this has been the Counter Racist Evolving Engineer platform, and I don't call it the family, but I call it the Cree colleagues, because we're citizen scientists here. This is a platform for blurs, black nerds. Let me tell you something. The side with the best nerds wins. Technology, the ability to do what you want to do and defend it. If you've got nerds who can make that happen, guess what? You win. So, yeah, I would love for this to be a really popular channel. I'd love for lots of people to subscribe, but it's more important to me that we get the right people, um, that we get Imagineers, because we need imagination. That's where the innovation comes from in science, technology, and innovation. We need Imagineers, as Walt Disney said, but we need people who enjoy meshing their imaginations with curiosity about what the evidence is in published science or just in their own observation, and people who enjoy using logic. Okay. Okay. So I guess that's it, and we'll see you next Friday at 6 p.m. Let me know what you think in the comments, and that's it for March 22nd, 2019. Signing out.